Hi, and welcome to October's edition of Breck Buzz. I'm your host, Haley Littleton, and today we're going to be talking about construction, streets and parks and trash in Breckenridge, and everything that really goes on within our Public Works Department with Mark Johnston, so be sure to stay tuned. Welcome back to Breck Buzz. Today we are joined by our Assistant Public Works Director, Mark Johnston. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And today, kind of just talking about all things public works. I think it's warm out today, but we are, getting into fall and into winter. I know, I think when I left my house this morning, it was 25 degrees, but I heard it was colder other places. But, what that kind of means is, as people may know, our construction season is kind of wrapping up, surprisingly, where that's maybe a little different than other places. And so, I think the construction project that people have probably noticed the most this summer and late summer and early fall in town was the Fiber 9600 project. We've talked a lot about that project on here, but I think we've talked less about the actual construction process because it was pretty unique. And so maybe walk us through what the crews were actually doing out there and what was the process of actually laying the fiber.
Absolutely. So we broke ground on May 22nd of this year for the fiber project, and our contractor moved into town and really bit off a lot before the 4th of July. We wanted to get the core town work done before the 4th of July. So it basically involves digging a trench down the road, and then once that trench is open, they lay conduit or a pipe in the roadway about 3 feet deep. We cover that back up and then put asphalt back in its place. And then every 300 to maybe 1,000 feet or so, we put a vault or a box at ground level that those pipes go into, and then close all that back up. And then the crews come back and they pull the actual fiber cable. So the fiber cable gets pulled into those boxes, and then that cable can be spliced and then distributed out to the residents and the businesses from there.
Yeah, so. And I think people were I personally was surprised. It was a pretty small footprint. I know there was, crews all around, but in terms of actual space they were taking up, it was pretty small.
Yeah, there was lots of crews working, and in some places we moved faster than others just because of the design. But we tried to be as minimal impact as possible for such a big, robust project.
Right. And so that was kind of the first phase. And so maybe kind of what are the next steps for the construction process? What all did we get done in this 2019 season?
Yeah, so the 2019 project will be complete here right around Halloween.
Nice.
Kind of the end of our typical construction season. And then from there, we'll look for council direction on what to do in 2020, but we've already given some recommendations kind of inside the area that we worked this year. But basically, we started at the Justice Center, which is at Park Avenue and Airport Road, and from there we went down the rec path all the way to the Transit Center at Watson, and then down the Riverwalk behind Main Street, all the way to Adams, up Adams to French, and then we came down Wellington Road, and that actually was a joint trench that we shared with Xcel Energy, who had the need to upgrade some electrical service. So by sharing that trench, we both saved some money, and although it took longer than the rest of the project because there was 2 projects going on, actually it was a little less disruptive than it would have been if we'd both done the projects individually.
Right.
So from there, we moved into the Wellington neighborhood, and we're actually going to be able to provide service to folks in the Wellington neighborhood, so that portion of the residential area was much more robust than the rest of it. Down Riling Road, down Huron, and back to the Justice Center. So we kind of created a loop that will give us some redundancy and if something were to get cut, our ability to continue to provide service.
Yeah, and maybe what would you say, to someone who would say, well, why not do it all at once? Or, why are we kind of phasing the construction out of this?
Well, if you think about it, to provide service to a resident, you have to dig to each individual home, and it's just very difficult for it all to happen at once. And honestly, by doing it in a little smaller scale, we're learning and we'll be more efficient and be able to provide it at a cheaper price moving forward. So.
Yeah. Definitely, and we can't have all the streets in Breckenridge under
for many reasons we wouldn't want that. So
no matter how, and the crews moved pretty fast, huh?
They did. We gave them some pretty strict deadlines at the start of the project to meet that 4th of July deadline, and they're plugging along, and they're going to be done by Halloween, which was our expectation, which is. For as much as we've gotten done, it's awesome.
Yeah. Do you have a rough estimate of how many miles, or?
The ring itself is about 3.5, but then there's all the residential drops and all that, and I don't have those numbers with me today.
But we've gotten a lot done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my maybe more macro level question about just general construction in town, because I think that people are always like, oh, what's the next project? What's the next project? And I think first, I would love to chat about maybe what construction is going to look like next year, but also maybe helping people understand a little bit more the challenges that we face when it comes to construction and our construction season up here.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the challenges first, because it is a unique environment to do construction in. I mean, obviously, the winter months is not the time to build things, and so from May 1st until November 1st is really our building season, and so that's half of what most places have to work with, and so we really have to condense everything into that time, and that's also the time that our citizens want to get out and play, right? So we would have to be kind of sensitive to that as well. And then just the rocky soils and the cold conditions just make it very challenging. We had some groups on this fiber project this winter that were coming up from Denver every day and not bringing a coat in May and being very surprised they were getting snowed on. So it's just those kinds of things that that make it a little different environment to work. But we figured it out, I think, and we do a pretty good job at it. So.
Yeah, and so then moving into this kind of next year, really, I mean, is it just the parking structure, or are there some more projects?
Well, of course, the parking structure is going to be a huge one, right? And I know we talk about that one a lot, but just to remind citizens that we will be closing the South Gondola lot from May 2020 till November of 2021, and so that's going to create some different parking challenges, and just remind people how great our transit system is, and how walkable our town is, and the fact that it's a great place to bike, and maybe just really push those alternative means of transportation and getting out of your car a little bit. So.
Yeah, and everybody loves to talk about roundabouts. Yeah, do we have any roundabouts coming this year, or are we kind of waiting till? No,
it'll be 2020 until we do the Watson roundabout, and that'll be kind of as we close out the parking structure project. That'll allow for better egress and ingress and into the actual facility.
Yeah, so. And I know that we've talked about the parking structure, that it's coming, but I think people we'll start to see more about the layout and sort of we want to do a lot to that area, right?
Yes, and not only are we building a parking structure, but then once we get people there, we want them to be able to, like I was saying before, be able to walk and get into town very easily. So the structure itself, is going to land on the southern end of the South Gondola lot, and so on that southern end as well as the east side of that lot, we're going to do some pedestrian improvements to try to make that walkability really good.
Yeah, and I heard a rumor about potentially connecting the bike path all the way through.
That would be awesome. That's always been a dream of mine, and then I think we'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, that would be great, because I know it can be a little confusing for people, and
in that area especially.
Yeah, and I think that it's great to point out that it's not just about sort of constructing a structure that's going to fit more cars, but really it gives us a unique opportunity to kind of reevaluate how traffic moves through that area.
Absolutely, and that's where that roundabout will come in too, making it easier for our transit system to move in and out of that area.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it on busy days when you're trying to let buses come out and people are coming in.
Exactly.
And, yeah, so, and just speaking of buses really quickly, we did just get our 2 new electric buses, and I think that's super
Absolutely.
important to highlight really quickly.
Yeah, so we got 2 Proterra electric buses that are en route now and performing really well. We're super excited about it. We also have a new bus barn with electric chargers in them, and so they're ready to go, and they're doing great, and super excited to be part of that green initiative.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be getting more and more.
Yeah, as we our buses age out, that's our plan, and we've also continue to chase some grant money for that as well.
Right, which is really important, and is what really helped us get those first 2 buses.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, talking about construction, talking about buses, kind of as we look forward, those are 2 things that really are important to the infrastructure of our town. I think another aspect of our infrastructure that's really important that people maybe don't always pay attention to is streets and parks, which, is such an important aspect. Maybe just really quick, kind of give people an overview of like what our streets and parks crew do.
Yeah, so in the wintertime, they're super busy dealing with snow, of course. We plow 22 miles of sidewalks and 122 lane miles of streets. So that's actually for a community our size quite a bit. And we work 24/7 in the wintertime doing that. But then once summer comes around, we have a total shift. The parks crew are in charge of the flowers in town and getting our bike racks and out and everything like that. And so it's a fun group to work with because it does change throughout the year. And of course our streets crew are busy on asphalt maintenance in the summer and all kinds of special projects and helping out with the fiber project this year and things like that. So
yeah, I've always wanted to trade with the person for the day that gets to drive around the little like flower watering vehicle. It looks fun.
And that's electric too, by the way, as well as the pump on that. So it's another great green initiative we were able to achieve in the last several years.
Yeah, and something that they also work on a lot is trash. Yes. And that's something that we have been working on a lot. So kind of give us an overview. I know that you've worked pretty closely with Jesse Burley regarding sort of all of our trash initiatives. So maybe share a little bit about what that has looked like over this last year.
Yeah, so just over a year ago now, the town council was able to hire our first sustainability coordinator, Jesse Burley, who you just mentioned, and she's been able to do some fabulous things for the community and really help our streets and parks crew meet our green goals. And so one of the first things she did was a waste audit on our trash and recycling cans on Main Street and in the core of town. And one of the things they found was there were quite a few coffee cups, those disposable coffee cups that are not recyclable in our recycling bin. And so when we got that information, we were able to start to work with the coffee shops to educate folks that, hey, these are actually trash and not to contaminate our recycling with them. And so those are the kinds of things that she's been able to do and really work with our park staff to meet some of our diversion goals, which is super cool. Another thing we did was we got some grant money and purchased 4 big belly trash cans.
Right.
And if you haven't seen these things, they're trash compactors that are solar trash compactors, and they're also smart, so they can tell you when they're full. And when the parks operators get a text and say, "Hey, I'm full. Come empty me."
That's awesome.
So it saves time to have to go out and look, and have to empty them when they're not full, and it also, of course, compacts them. So really cool there. And then another trash program that Jesse and I have been working on ever since she started actually, was the town manages 10 dumpster enclosures in the core of town. And those dumpster enclosures are used by over 200 businesses and residents, and it helps us consolidate trash in town. But we've really been looking at trying to educate the users of those and try to do some green initiatives and educate people about how to recycle in those and segregate our glass and all that kind of great stuff. So really kind of exciting stuff if you're into trash, which I am. So
and maybe here we can just remind people that town receptacles are not for your personal home trash.
And we did just recently pass an ordinance that does make that illegal. So those receptacles are really intended for the trash you produce while you're walking around, and not you really need to have home service for that. Yeah,
and we also worked with Recycle Across America to create some better signage, I think, which has been awesome to help people really understand, because it's so different in every other community.
It is, and Recycle Across America does a great job by kind of making that a uniform message, so people from different communities that come to visit us, when they see that signage, hopefully it makes sense to them.
Yeah, and it's probably helpful to remind people here that they can also always go to Coin Valley to recycle some of their stuff. We've got lots of big receptacles out there that are super useful as well.
Absolutely, and that's a good segue to talk about a project we're going to do in 2020.
Yeah.
And that is the Coin Valley River crossing there.
Oh,
we're going to be
right.
replacing the culverts there with a new arch culvert. But the exciting thing about that project is we're also going to be able to have an underground tunnel for rec path users, so that conflict that currently exists where bikers and motorists have to yield to one another now, they'll have the bikers and pedestrians will have the ability to go underneath the road there in conjunction with that project. But it will come with some impacts. It's going to take most of the summer to build that project. Pretty much May to October, like we talked about before. And in late summer, we'll probably have about a 2-month closure of Coin Valley Road with a detour on Valley Brook. So we'll be sure to message that really well, but just want to get that information out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is that's super important as we look to sort of developing that McCain property down there.
Absolutely.
Is creating that safe kind of rec path connection. So I think it's all just preparing for that. And last but not least, I know winter seems far away and we don't want to talk about it, but I did see them putting up holiday lighting in Blue River Plaza right now, which means that snow is coming.
Snow is coming.
And, I think that it would be really interesting for our viewers, and as I've learned more about this, I found it really fascinating to better understand just like how much planning goes into streets and parks for the winter. As you said, it's a 24/7 sort of operation because it can snow at any point. And so how are you guys preparing for that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so this time of year, our fleet staff's really busy going through all the equipment, making sure it's up to snuff for the winter season. But I would say our biggest planning challenge each and every year is hiring our seasonal employees. We have a lot of great full-time staff that do a lot of the work in the wintertime, but we supplement that with seasonal employees, both on the streets and park side, and then of course we also have seasonal transit workers that we're all trying to hire right now.
Right.
And I think anyone that hires employees in this environment knows that's a challenge. So that's what we spend a lot of time doing, trying to get really quality people, which we always are able to do, but it does take some time. And then there's the training piece as well. You may see a plow out on a October day where you're thinking, why are these guys out driving around in circles? But they're learning the new routes, they're learning the routes and training and that kind of thing. And then, once this season gets on and it starts to snow, everybody knows what to do, and it just kind of works like clockwork because we do work 24 hours a day. So it's not like we're calling people in, hey, it's snowing.
Yeah.
We're always prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, every time I see one of the employees in the little one on the sidewalk, I want to go buy them a coffee or something and hand it to them. But I think they need both their hands, so that probably wouldn't work.
They do, but it's important to remember to yield to them. If you see them on the sidewalk and you can step out of the way or at least make eye contact, and then that way that you can kind of negotiate passing one another, that's super helpful.
Yeah, well, we should mention that, definitely being careful when you're on our streets and sidewalks in the winter.
Just kind of slow down, give the plow drivers, whether they're on the sidewalk plow or a regular plow, give them a little extra room, give them some time to do their job so we can make it safe for you.
Yeah, and while I hope that it snows as much as it did last year, I know that the plow drivers probably got a little tired in March when it just snowed constantly.
Yeah, it was the biggest March I've ever been since 15 years I've lived up here.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get just as much snow, but it'll be a little bit more spread out.
Absolutely.
So, well, I think it's just so interesting to see the construction aspect and the streets and parks and the plows, and really, you guys just keep our community going, and it's so important. And I think that everyone who can and should thank you guys for just the tireless hours you put in to really make sure that our town is working. So thank you for being on here, and thanks for everything you do.
Well, thank you, and we have a lot of great dedicated staff that really make it happen. So I really want to thank them and everything they do.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have for this time in Breck Buzz, but we will see you guys next month.